Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast. This week, I wanted to invite Evan. I for some reason, have to really struggle to, say his name. I'm bad with names, so I apologise to Evan or anyone listening if I have pronounced it wrong. But I hope you do enjoy this episode. We talked about ads, the differences between ads and content, and we got a little bit into entrepreneurship as well. And, I think we might invite him back on to talk about entrepreneurship a little bit more, but that's between me and you. And I'll see you very, very soon. I'm now going to let him introduce a little bit more about what he does and roll into that interview. But thank you so much for coming back for this week, and I'll see you very, very soon.
My name's enver.mehme. I run a small advertising agency based in Kent. We specialise in kind of like Facebook ads, etc. Essentially helping business owners and brand builders to get more customer sales and clients through advertising on social media.
Absolutely. No, I mean, for me, the space has been very, very interesting this year. And, how as the space has grown and as COVID's kind of hit and, really shown and really showcased people that if they weren't on digital, they need to be. I think that's the main thing for me, I mean, the initial question, I guess, that comes is from, how did you get started in ads? Because some people fall into it. Some people have always wanted to be like, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. Kind of what was your story into how did you get into Facebook ads, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's quite a funny one, really, because I've always been interested, like since a young kid, like how do businesses grow and how do they get customers and how do they get their name out there? So I had that kind of curiosity growing up. Always used to look at ads on the streets, TV commercials, radio commercials, and I was always like interested in like, I wonder if I can be like a guy that creates this sort of stuff one day. Years and years down the line, I tried, stepping my foot into many different businesses, which didn't end up working out. And then I stumbled across university, kind of mistakenly, and I studied graphics and marketing. So kind of like more the branding kind of stuff, designing stuff. And everyone used to always ask me, like when I was at uni, what is it that you did? And I used to say advertising, because I thought it sounded better, and that's really what I wanted to get into, right? Cut a long story short, finished university and didn't necessarily go straight into employment. I actually started freelancing. So I was doing, freelance graphic design, creating logos, websites, all that kind of stuff. And obviously, as I progressed my journey in freelancing, I kind of got onto the idea of, okay, how do I increase my client retention and, grow this business more, get into kind of more lucrative business model. So I kind of fell back into the advertising stuff. Okay, what can we do here? And I actually met a guy. Worked with him as a freelancer, and he did like retainers, like advertising, Google ad retainers, social media, stuff like that. And it was really interesting to me. Like he was talking to me about the kind of results he was getting his clients, and I was like, holy shit, like this stuff's incrediable. Like you're getting these kind of results for clients, they're growing their business and they have you on retainer for 3-6 months. So I was like, okay. I was like, because I wanted to provide more value to my clients, right? I wanted to really build a relationship with them and be that person that they partner up with to grow their business, because it's more for me than just growing a business and having clients. I really want to build those relationships with people. So that's what stumbled me across the kind of advertising stuff. Went down the loophole with doing a ton of courses, learning how to do it in the first place. And then I think I just offered it for free to a few of my current clients. And then kind of build it up from that way. So essentially kind of the reason I transitioned into advertising was really from the thought of, okay, how do I provide more value to my clients and make more of an impact in our business? And the only way of doing that was to obviously generate them more leads, sales, and do it that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I completely agree. I mean, for me, it's been interesting to see, as I say, as I said at the start, to see how the space has changed and see how, I mean, for me personally, I've been in video creation or content creation for a decade plus at this point, in one way or another, more commercial based and more videography based for the last 4 or 5 years, closing in on a 4-year anniversary, hooray. But I think for me it's been interesting because I've been saying for and the reason why I premise that is I've been saying for the last 2, 3, 4 years, before COVID hit, look, you need to be on digital. You need to be doing social. You need to be on, do it. Why you're not creating content? You have a phone, right? In a similar, so you have a phone. Why you're not creating content, right? and to a lot of business owners, and you know what I was saying, and of course no one knew COVID was going around the corner, but it's that kind of, I guess, in that kind of like forced hand way now, right? You know, from what happened with COVID and when COVID hit, and you know, I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more. But for me, the main thing was like, you know, I was saying to clients, you know, oh, you need to be on social, you need to be talking to your clients, you need to be creating content that's valuable, etc., etc., etc. You know, a lot of what you talk about on your socials as well, which I think is really important, and you know, hence why I wanted to have you on the podcast to hear your thoughts on them. But I think the main thing for me is like, what role do you feel? Because I think for me, I see ads and content slightly differently in regards to they serve the same purpose, but they are different in regards to the skill sets. And I think that for me, like, what role would you say, for example, a video or the content specifically that is the ad, right? So whether that's an image or etc. You know, or the video. How important is that piece of content for the success of the ad?
Wow, like it's more or less like all of it, right? Because you get a lot of people, they, you know, it's kind of split decision, and it's really subjective, and it kind of depends on the product and the service that you're trying to advertise. But I say to all of my clients, you know, it's so important, because we offer kind of content and media days, right, to capture that content to then leverage within the advertising, which obviously improves the performance. And you know, it's just so important. I feel like content's often overlooked, because I get many business owners that might come to me. They say, yeah, well, we've tried Facebook advertising and stuff, and they've just tried a boosting post, which maybe we can get into, which isn't actually the advertising campaign itself. But a lot of the times, you know, people don't pay enough dividends and enough respect to the actual content and how the ad's displayed. And video content more specifically, like that's like really, really impactful. If you know how to create like a great video, and then you can put that video in ad format in front of the kind of people that are willing to kind of invest into your service, etc., then it can be very powerful. And what I put it down to really is like, put yourself in the position of a consumer, right? And it varies on the industry. If you're like a coach or consultant, etc., and you've got video content, you've got video ads, then it breaks that barrier of, you know, trust, maybe credibility. You know, people are buying from people. If you're a coach, etc., it's nice to have video content, because they're going to be the person that you invest into. And I don't know, flip the script and say, for example, you've launched a new some new like techie gadget or product that says it can do X, Y, Z. Well, if you have a video of it demonstrating that it can do that, then also that kind of builds the trust, and it shows people that, okay, it actually works and it does what it does. Whereas, you know, if you're not creating content, you know, if you're not creating videos, etc., it's really hard to communicate the value of what it is that you're offering, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think you know the main thing, and I'm glad you mentioned boosted posts, because there's a misconception a lot when you know, I'm sure you talk to a lot of business owners, but you know, when I talk to business owners, they're like, oh, we've done Facebook, you know, we've done that because we boosted a post. I'm like, okay, back up a sec. Boosting a post is not the same as doing an ad strategy, and is not the same as doing an ad, and is not the same as doing a campaign. They're all separate things, right? Now, by no means am I saying I'm the expert on this. You know, we have an expert in the call, you know, so maybe you can shed some light on that. But I think for me, they're different. I see them as different. I know they're different. But, you know, why? I mean, the first question there is like, why shouldn't someone boost a post, would you say?
Yeah, so you got to understand, guys, that, you know, Facebook makes all of their revenue. And by the way, when I reference, or me and Carl reference, the Instagram ads, Instagram is actually owned by Facebook, so they're completely the same thing, but they're all launched on Facebook platforms. So that's why we refer to it as Facebook ads. But yeah, you just got to kind of put yourself in the position, right? Like, Facebook earn all of their revenue from advertising, you know, literally like 90%. It could even be more. So what they're trying to do is like make you spend money. And what you find is that when you actually go to creating ads or boosting posts and stuff, Facebook will recommend to click these certain buttons and, you know, perform these certain actions, which aren't actually going to benefit you within the campaign and your kind of budget. And it's going to make you spend more on areas that aren't necessarily going to get you the greatest results. Now, the difference between a Facebook advertising campaign and a boosted post is actually quite a lot. When you're launching like an actual Facebook campaign, you really want to get deep on the kind of targeting, you know, testing different strategies, different pieces of copy, different images, different videos, you know, a ton of a load of other stuff. But when it comes to boosting a post, you're really just kind of pumping a daily spend into an image or graphic that you've already posted, or it could even be a video. just to get more kind of eyes on it. There's no actual strategy behind it. You're not sending them to a kind of funnel or a destination. It's really just getting more awareness to your page. So when I speak to business owners and we're like, yeah, we do Facebook advertising, etc., and they say, well, I've tried that, but it didn't work. 9 times out of 10, it's because they've boosted a post which hasn't actually got them a return on investment because there's no strategy in place, right? Whereas when it comes to actually launching a campaign, it's like, right, what do you want to get from this? I want to generate more leads, I want to get more sales, etc. So you build the strategy within the actual ads manager in Facebook, which looks really confusing to anyone going on there as a newbie. And you set a destination and you put loads of trackable metrics in place, etc. And you can't do that with a boosted post. So really, it's Facebook just trying to get your page or your picture, your image, your video more awareness, but it doesn't actually give you anything tangible in terms of a return on investment.
And I think, and I don't know whether you agree with this, but I think there's a misconception in marketing, and I sound like a broken record when I say this because I know I've said it in multiple pieces of content, but the reason why I say it multiple times is because it's becoming more and more clear the more people are in the space that marketing's not this golden chalice of you do X, Y, and Z and it works, right? Whether we're doing Facebook ads, whether we're doing content, whether we're doing a mix of both, whether that's organic posting or content for ads, right? They're both the same within the same. But, for me, there is certain strategies and stuff you can add in, but that you have to test them, right? Like, would you say there is can you find maybe you found it and this is going to make me millions of views and you lots of money, but is there a golden, I guess, is there a golden chalice, or is there a golden, you do this, it returns you investment?
It's a tough question to ask, man, really, because there's so many, and just a bit of clarity for the people listening, we did actually used to serve everyone in terms of Facebook ads. So, I'd help coaches, I'd help e-commerce brands, and we're actually narrowing that down now just to a certain industry purely because of what you just said, right? You can get a strategy and you can find a strategy within a certain industry that works, and which we've done, but you use that same strategy for another company, another industry, a different product service, and it won't necessarily work. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a framework that you can follow, right? And what I would recommend to the business owners out there that maybe want to generate more leads or they want to get more sales on their products online, you've really got to have that foundational elements of your business built first, right? So say, for example, there's a startup company that wants to work with me for Facebook advertising. They have no presence on social media, nothing like that. I wouldn't recommend going in and spending thousands and thousands on ads, purely and simply because of the fact that people like to do their research, etc. And if you haven't built that solid foundation first, or you haven't got that presence, then it's not to say that you can't get results, but your campaign might not be a raving success like it could. So there's so many different elements to advertising in terms of strategy. You've got lead generation, you've got info products, you've got e-commerce. So what would you like to kind of narrow in on, Carl? Or is there anything in particular just based on the audience?
I mean, for me, I think it's more just a generic, the generic advice and the generic more, I think that's more useful, because for me, a lot of the people who I know and the people I talk to, I try to work broad but also narrow in the same way. Now let me break that down, because I just contradicted with the two words I just said, right? I try to work with business owners who are right for me, right? And I try to help them understand how they can create content and talk to their ideal consumer. And how does this link to ads? Well, this links to ads in the same way that 5 different ad agencies can all do ads, right? But one might be really, really good at fashion. The other one might be really, really good at helping business coaches and consultants and one-to-one people get leads, right? The other one might be really, really good at e-commerce, right? So the main point there, and I'm glad you mentioned that, is it's not one shoe size fits all situation, right? I think the main goal there, or the main thing is there, as a business owner, you need to ask yourself, can you work with this person, right? And then what are the tangible results, or what are the tangible things? And it's always, and a lot of marketing that we do and I do and you do, I think there's a misconception where it's like, okay, you're going to do this, this, and this, and then you will get a return on investment, right? I don't think that's specifically true. I think a business owner should think about it in the respect of, okay, you started this thing, whether it's a podcast, whether it's videos, whether it's ads, whatever it may be. Are you getting more inquiries? Are you getting more leads? Are you selling more of whatever it is you're aiming to sell, or your service, or etc.? but you can't necessarily tie it to whatever that was, right? Whether it's the ad or the content or the podcast or the videos, right? Because in a perfect world, that person who's reaching out to you would go, oh, I just watched the podcast. Oh, I just saw an ad. Oh, I just watched the video, right? In a perfect world, because that gives you a connection, right? But the world isn't perfect, unfortunately. So, I think for me, the main thing, and, I'll throw it back to you in a moment, but the main thing for me is to look at when you started working with myself or etc., whoever you were working with the strategies you were working with, have you seen a increase in traction, as in the people talking about what you do and the amount of people engaging with what you do, and then also the amount of potential opportunities that you can convert into sales, right? Because at the end of the day, if the business owner doesn't know how to convert it from an inquiry into a sale, that's not down to the marketer. In my opinion, it's not. That's down to the business owner to know how to sell their products and understand why their product's valuable. I mean, what's your thoughts? What's your opinions? Do you agree, or do you?
It's an interesting one, Carl, because we can only do so much, right? You come to us to help you, promote the product or promote the service or generate inquiries, but we only do so much, right? We don't actually take care of the sales process. So I always have conversations with clients. Let's just talk. I don't know. Let's talk in the respect of a lead generation client. So a client will come to me. They want to generate more leads for their kitchen remodeling business. Take for example. Okay. Now, we'll sit down and have a conversation about the sales process, because it's equally as important to me to understand how they bring on a client from, A, being a prospect, to B, actually creating a sale. Because if I can see leaks in that process or leaks in their follow-up systems, etc., then that's going to affect the results that I get, because they're not going to then make a return on the investments of the leads that we send them. So it's equally as important to not only know how to generate the leads, but also know how to nurture, follow up with, and close those clients. Because we can get the leads, but if you're unable to manage them or close them, then really we haven't got to the destination that we'd have liked to. So I always say to my clients, when it comes to advertising, know your market. Who is it that you want to get in front of? Don't try and advertise all of the services that you do. Try and be specific to a certain industry with certain products or service that you have, if it's in lead generation. So let's say a construction company. You don't want to go out advertising, we're a construction company, we do this, that, and the other, right? You want to niche it right down. So what do you enjoy doing most? What's your bread and butter service? What can you flip and repeat non-stop? And what do you have the capacity to handle? Well, okay, I like to do kitchen remodels. Right, okay, so let's advertise the kitchen remodels. Let's not send them to your website, because there's so many different distractions. Let's actually make a landing page, because at the end of the day, we want to get one thing, and that's the phone number. I know we want to book a call with these guys. We want to do like a free quotation, something like that. So it's creating a system that serves the ads and makes it as easy as possible for the user to get what it is that they want. The common misconception that we get with advertising these days is, a lot of companies might do an ad and they just send traffic to their website. But the thing is, with websites, there's so many different distractions, and you might not necessarily get those contact details, because you've got your about page, your testimonials page, your portfolio page, all of which is great, but you can actually condense that into one page in a landing page format. So that's really why people come to us, because we know how to make the journey from A to Z super easy and intuitive for the user, whilst also getting the return on investment that we want for the client. So I think it's just massively important to understand who it is that you want to target, what you want to kind of offer to the marketplace, and also having the back end systems in place to nurture, follow up with, and close those clients when they do come in.
Yeah, so I completely agree, and I think it's one of those things where, this kind of leads in some ways onto my next question, but the main thing there is like understanding and having the clarity of what your service actually is, right? Like what is the golden service, or what is the thing you want to do lots of, right? Like if you could choose one thing in your business to do for the rest of for 6 months to a year, what is that thing, right? Is it one-to-one coaching? Is it filming a video? Is it creating a podcast? Is it redesigning a kitchen? Is it doing the carpet in someone's house? Whatever your business is, right? You will have one or two things that you do, or possibly more, up to 5, maybe 6, but there's one of those things which is your profit margin wise is a lot larger, number one, and that's something to think about as well. But also that you actually will probably enjoy doing more as well. From an enjoyment perspective, it's you doing it or your team will doing it, depending on the scale of the company. But I mean, my next question was going to be, for those people who are starting out in business, as we were saying before the call, a lot of the people who listen to the podcast on a regular basis are people who are starting out videographers, starting out photographers, starting out ad agencies, marketing agencies, etc. They want to get into the space, so to speak. What advice would you, from the years you've been doing it, would you give to those people who are starting now? Because I imagine for me, it would be a lot harder to start now because there's a lot more people, and there's and the barrier to entry is a lot harder, is a lot higher, in that respect.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first and foremost, I've only just learned this lesson and I've only just started action on it. But I feel like it's so important for anyone out there who, maybe they're a freelancer, they want to start their own business, or they want to offer, a motherboard of services. I would really recommend to just get good at one thing and be known for that one thing. Because, when I started off in freelancing and branding and stuff, I used to do everything, man. I used to do the graphic design, I used to do websites, I used to do flyers, business cards. And when I started doing the ads, I was doing all sorts in that respect too, and no one really knew. I would get prospects come to me, and they would be like, "Okay, so what is it that you actually do?" Because when you do everything and you're generalized, especially when starting out, when you have a huge team, then it's okay. But when you're just starting out, it's hard for the person or your audience on social media, wherever it is, to understand what it is exactly that you do and what it is that you're good at. So the minute that I stripped apart my services and I narrowed down on one thing, which was Facebook ads, my marketing, my communication, the people that follow me and my audience really understand and kind of resonate with what it is that I'm putting out to the marketplace, because it's only that one thing, right? And I'm getting good at that one thing. So I would recommend to anyone starting out, hone in on what it is that you enjoy to do. What are you good at, first and foremost? And if you're not good at it yet, then, get the correct tools and education and knowledge to do so, because I've invested like endless amount of money, thousands and thousands on courses and mentorship, consulting, coaches, to give me those tools and strategies to really hone in on what it is I wanted to do, because I didn't know how to do advertising right, but I enjoyed it, and I knew that I could create great relationships with it, and not only that, bring it on in the future to help me create my own businesses, which is a huge goal of mine. Just find out that one thing that you want to do, and you can talk well about. Maybe you don't know much about it yet, or invest the time, money, etc. to do so. And just make sure that all of your marketing on social media, etc., revolves around that one thing, and don't confuse the marketplace with what it is that you do. Now, once you've got the team, you've got the capacity and stuff, then you can turn generalized. But that's kind of my feedback or advice for people just starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I completely agree, and I think it's one of those things where, the concept of how narrow you go is really down to you, right? Like, there's been this debate in the videography community for a very long time, right? If you do weddings, you are a solo wedding videographer, and the only thing you do is weddings. Well, technically, I would say you shouldn't only do weddings, and the reason why is mainly because, one, you'll get sick of doing weddings, number one. Number two, when something like COVID hits, you're out of work for 2 years. Basically, to put it bluntly. So the thing is, it's about, there's a difference between niching down and saying, right, I'm a videographer who helps businesses and brands. For example, what I did was niche down into that. I still do the odd event here and there, I still do the odd wedding here and there, etc. But I don't advertise that I do that, right? That's more of a, if I see the opportunity, or if someone asks me to do it, then yeah, sure, why not, right? But the goal, or the thing I'm striving towards to, talk about or build more connections in, is the business and branding industries, right? It's those industries. So that's how I've niched down, but it's also quite broad, because brands and businesses, that could be anything. So if there's a situation like, for example, with COVID, where there is a sector that's shut, or, a sector that ends up not existing for a while, or whatever it may be, I'm then not in a position where I'm like, oh, cool, I don't have any work, and that kind of leads on to my next question a little bit as well. I mean, for Facebook ads, for those who don't know, you can basically do them all remotely, pretty much. You don't need to really meet people in person. It's not like filming content, etc. Like, that's the only bit for me that I would see that there's like a person-to-person, situation. The majority of it can be done remotely outside of that. But have you kind of how has, I guess, the age-old question there is, how did COVID affect your business in relation to what it was before COVID? specifically. So, this year specifically,
Yeah, yeah,
as we're
absolutely.
scarily approaching the year of like when it happened last year, which is
Yeah.
crazy to think about. But anyway,
So I'll get into that, Carl, but I just want to elaborate a little more on the niching side of things and give the audience some perspective, right? So, I kind of I had a consulting call the other day with this guy over in the US. He owns a really successful, coaching consulting company, and he was kind of giving me this lowdown on niching and what it actually means to the consumers. So, you say, for example, you are okay. Let's take you want to do a wedding, right? You want to have a wedding, and you're looking for someone to, or let's say an event. Let's say an events company. You're an events company. You're looking for someone that can build your Facebook ads and launch this ad to get as many people to this event as possible. You've got, I don't know, let's say 3 agencies that you're looking at. They all come under the kind of the framework of an advertising agency. So you've got one agency that does all sorts of ads. They work with all sorts of people. They're a media-based company. They do content. They do websites. You've then got another person who just does Facebook ads. And then you've got the last person who just does Facebook ads for events management companies. So it's like, that's kind of how you got to look at niching down. It's really up to you, in terms of what you do. Like Carl said, he's niched his service down, but he hasn't niched the industry down. And it really comes to the point of kind of when you're doing everything for everyone, you're competing on price. When you do a certain service for everyone, you're competing on value. But when you do a certain service for a certain person, you kind of eliminate the competition because you only appeal to that person, and your marketing, your understanding of that industry is far better than someone who owns a generalized agency or generalized service. So I just wanted to spill the beans on kind of what it means to niche down. There's niching down in the service, there's niching down in industry, and kind of some clarity on that front. I hope that helps. But yeah, have you got anything to kind of sound that, Carl, or would you like me to move on to the?
no, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. I think it's a personal decision, and but you need to be aware of both sides of the fence, right? And that's why I wanted to, discuss it earlier a little bit about, if I use the wedding example because it's an easy one to understand. But if you're gonna do that, you need to understand that, okay, well, I'm taking a level of risk here because if weddings, for whatever reason, right? People were saying before COVID, oh, no one's going to stop getting married. Yeah, well, people are still going to get married, but what if they actually can't? Because of the pandemic,
You're going to be
right?
interested to
Right?
what happens next in this conversation. So when
Yeah.
we're talking about when I started, right? When the first COVID hit, I had about 5 gym clients. So I was doing lead generation for gyms. I weren't necessarily specialized in terms of my marketing, etc., but I was only going for gyms purely based off the fact because it was kind of like a popcorn effect. I got one result for one gym, and they had it's like a community. They all know kind of different gym owners, but they're too far away to be competition. So they were sharing my information. I was like, I'm doing this gym system. It's literally like copy and paste in terms of the strategy. So I'm just going to go crazy in this industry. Now, COVID hit, and I just completely lost all of those clients. Like literally on the spot, lost all of those clients. Went into kind of survival mode because this was at the point of having my first child, and I was like, oh my god, going crazy. I've literally lost all my clients. And then I had to be resourceful, right? I had to learn different skills and start targeting different industries. So, like Carl said, it's super important that when you're niching down, make sure that that's not going to come down, bite you in the arse one day like it did me. If you do decide to kind of niche down, but yeah, recovered very well. And what helped with that was just plastering social media. Getting very active on social media, story content, video content, all that good stuff. And eventually, brought myself back up. Loads of different clients in different industries now. But again, we might be looking at narrowing down, niching down, not necessarily with the marketing and stuff, but with who we're reaching out to. Simply because we found a strategy in a certain industry that really works. So, yeah, I mean, when it comes to niching down, it's not necessarily like, oh my god, I have to only do this. Like Carl said earlier, if someone does come to you and they say, do you do X, Y, Z? It's not to say that you can't take it on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. And it's one of those things, but it gives you the option of, I'm going to market myself as this thing, right? So the majority of my work is going to be that industry, that thing, whatever that thing may be, right? Whatever your niche you decide it to be. And then after that, you then can take the choice of, do I want to do an event? Do I want to do a wedding? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? Etc. In the same way, if you, I don't know, did kitchens for the whole thing, and then you decided, actually, I want to do a living room, or I want to do a bedroom, or etc. And you want to transform those as a contractor, for example. Then you could do that. And I think the question that jumped to mind whilst you were, just explaining about niching was, for me, it's interesting to hear what people's expectations from, whether it's your clients or whether it was yours, expectation on regards to, like, okay, I start with social media. Okay, cool. I now am going to see a return when, in regards to time, right? Because there's a misconception, I don't know whether you found this as well, where it's, you do the social media thing, cool, month passes, 2 months pass, maybe 3 months pass. Okay, well, when am I going to see my return? Well, that's like saying how long's a piece of string, because to every industry, every bit of content, the strategy, etc., will change upon when you're going to see that. Like, it's possible that you're doing something wrong, yes, of course, but you're not going to know that until you've been doing it wrong for a month, 2 weeks, whatever it may be, right? So you're not going to necessarily know. But also, with some clients it's 3 months, with some other clients it's a year. So, have you found that, or have you found there's like a pattern in respect to turnaround time, or expected perceived return on investment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, firstly, to manage expectations and have that conversation with a client, because you could get a client that, and I've had it in the past, that come on, they're like, we want results, we want this, that, and the other, and they're very impatient because they expect that, if you put £1 in, you should be getting £2 back within a week. Whereas sometimes it's not the case, and it's not to say, we've launched a campaign before. On the first day, we've already got like a 10 times return on investment. But you've got to understand that, if you haven't advertised with Facebook before or social media, you have no data to work with, right? And what I mean by data is, Facebook works off of its own algorithm. If you put a X amount of money in and you've been advertising for, a month or two, Facebook's going to have a clear understanding of who it is that engages with your ads most, or who converts into leads most, and it's going to kind of work with you. Now, when you're starting off with Facebook ads, there's a thing called like a testing phase, right, where your ads will start to distribute out to different pockets of audiences around the world or around the UK, wherever it is that you're targeting. And it will start to learn about these consumers and, who watches the videos the most, who engages with it, who goes to your landing page, etc. And you've really got to give it time. So what I say to clients is like, look, and I only really take on clients that I know I can get the result, because my industry and my business is based off of the reputation of the results we get, right? So I take on a client, I know we can get the results, and I'm like, look, it may take a week or two to get the ball moving, right, to get some traction, simply because you have to go through that testing phase. And what I mean by testing phase is, when we launch an advertising campaign, we don't just launch one video with one set of copy, with one ad. We test a load of different things. And this is like the most important part of Facebook advertising, is testing. Because so many people get so emotionally attached to a piece of copy or an image that they just want to put all of their eggs in one basket into this ad. Whereas in actual fact, you should really be testing, 1 or 2 different videos, 1 or 2 different images, 1 or 2 different carousels, short form copy, long form copy, just to kind of tap into those different areas of, people that may be watching. You get people that like to look at images, you get people that like to watch videos, etc. So it's really important to test what works. So I say to my clients, right, we're going to go through the testing phase, which takes, anything from, 5 to 10 days, let's say. After we've been through that testing phase, we're going to have a clear understanding from the data of the actual ads manager what people engage with most. So let's say we launched a video, and ad, and a carousel. We're going to see after that testing phase, right, no one looked at the image, no one clicked on the image, but hold on, we've got, 300 people who've watched 75% of this video, and we've got like a click-through rate of 20%. So we're like, holy crap. Okay, now let's cut off the ad spend from the image, because clearly it's not working. And the client might be like, oh my God, that was my best image, but you can't get emotionally attached to it, right? Because you've got to detach yourself from the situation and just go from the data, because everything in advertising is just going through data. Don't get emotionally attached. So that's why we do the testing phase. Now, we found our winning ad. We call it like the golden audience or the golden ad. And we double down on that, and we scale it up. We duplicate it. We try different things with it. We try different copy, we may even try different video. And we do all these kind of different things. And really, it's like what you said in the beginning, right? We start broad. We chuck everything at Facebook. Try this, try that bit of copy, try this image, blah, blah, blah. And we narrow it down based upon data, not based upon emotion and what we want to put out to the marketplace. And that's how we find the golden audience, and that's how we get results. So typically, if it's me taking on a client that I know I can get results, I know I can get a return on investment 100% guaranteed within month one. You can start to see leads coming through from day one. It really depends on, there's so many variables to it, Carl. But I would say anyone out there that's looking to do any kind of service like this is really manage the expectations of the client, have a very in-depth conversation with them about what it is that they expect, and just let them know that, look, if we haven't advertised before, or you're new to this sort of stuff, we need to go through this phase of understanding what it is that your audience engage with. And then we can double down on that, triple down on that, and branch out from that to get the results that you want.
Yeah, it's exactly the same whenever you create a piece of content, but slightly different in the same way, right? There's a different strategy that's evolved, but the same process is true, right? We'll try and see what works. For example, I was working with a client a couple of weeks ago. We just launched a podcast for her, and initially we started by, okay, let's cut up this podcast, let's put it on Instagram, let's put it on Twitter, let's put it on LinkedIn, let's put it on Facebook, let's put it on everywhere, right? See what happens, right? And then we found out about a month after, most of the traction was on LinkedIn. Okay, so let's double down on LinkedIn, right? So we removed we didn't remove the posts, we didn't continue with the posts on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And then we optimized them for LinkedIn specifically. And then since then, the engagement and the momentum we're building on LinkedIn is a lot higher, right? And is becoming better. And that's the main thing. It's the same whenever you create content. This is more organic content, but the same will be true in an ad case as well. So I think it's understanding the things, and I really like the fact you mentioned setting expectations to people who are running a company or do anything. You need to set those expectations with that client and say, look, this is what we've actually had. These are the tangible things, right? We've started this, we've done this action, started an ad, created content, started Lawyers Applause, podcast, whatever it may be. And these are the things that has actually happened. You've got more comments, you've got more likes, you've got these people who are quote unquote, copying what you're doing or commenting on what you're doing or saying, why am I not doing that, right? If you have someone doing that just from an organic perspective, right, you haven't put ads behind it, etc., and it's someone in your community, right, as in someone who does similar role to you, you must be doing something correct, because otherwise they wouldn't be copying you, right? And they wouldn't be spending their time and their energy looking at what you're doing, because they've got obviously their life is either not busy enough, number one, which means they have time to kill, or they are so intrigued with what you're doing, and it must be increasing some level of engagement or some level of interaction, that they potentially might want to copy it or whatever, right? And that's a good thing for you, because it means it's a validation. It goes back to what I was saying before about just because you haven't necessarily been paid directly right now, you have to look at it from a more broad perspective. Have you had more people talk about what you do? Have you had more people like your post? Have you had more comments than you usually get, right? And not necessarily always connect it to an arbitrary, this post got a number of views, this post got, or this video got a number of views, or whatever it may be. Because to be honest with you, the views don't mean anything unless it's an engagement variable, e.g. like, share, comment, or inbox, or DM, or etc. They're the things that actually matter. I can get 1 million views on a video, but if no one comments, likes, and etc., YouTube will just bury it, because it sees it as like, and YouTube does the same thing in its algorithm, what you were talking about putting pockets, on Facebook. It tests and says, okay, well, is this a good video? How does it find that out? Well, it sends it out into recommended for a certain set of people and says, if they watch the whole video, they like the video, they comment on the video, and they engage with the video, it means it's a good video. So let's do it to another set. Okay, what happens then? Okay, same thing happened. Okay, and so on. And what you'll find is, if you look at a graph, it will eventually start going very, very up, very, very quick, especially on YouTube, when you get into recommended. And you'll start gaining, it will start by gaining momentum, but it will start by, maybe you got 100 views. Okay, well, maybe you're now on 1,000 views. Okay, in a week, you're now from 1,000 to 10,000. Okay, from 10,000 to 17,000, etc. Right? And yeah, and it's not going to just magically happen, right? For example, I'll give you a key example on my channel. I did an event video a year to two ago, and it got no views for the first year, pretty much, right? Maybe a couple of hundred here or there, right? But nothing to write home about, right? It got into recommended last November, and from last November to now, which would be, let's call it 6 months, it's gained, I think, 90% of its views, right? 90 or 80 to 90% of its views. It went from around 1,000 just passively to like, oh, just my viewership and me sharing it around, to now being on 20,000 views. The only reason why it's on 20,000 views is simply because it got into recommended, it started building that momentum, and it continued to build momentum, right? That's through keywords, that's through right time, right place, etc., etc., etc. Right? There's we could sit here and talk about it for hours, right? Like we could talk about those variables for hours. But the point that I'm making here is it's all about a momentum swing. And the same thing will happen with ads. The same thing will happen with anything. So, what would you say to clients? So, for example, you have, I'm sure you wouldn't have this, but let's just say for the sake of this conversation, you had this, and it's like, oh, the ads aren't doing exactly what the client expects, or the client, is not exactly 100% happy with the ad process. What advice would you give to someone who's in that position, who, maybe is a month in or month and a half in, and they're like, I can see it happening because we're gaining some momentum, but it's slower than they originally expected, and they didn't set those expectations.
So just based off of kind of my experience, like if you're a month or two in and you're not getting the results, obviously we need to look at the data. Maybe you didn't test enough. Maybe you didn't put the energy and time into finding your golden audience. But what it really comes down to is it's not just the ad itself; it's the whole process, right? So you could go on the Facebook platform or the Facebook database, etc., and you can have a look at the performance of the ads, and you'll see that you could get tricked, because Facebook will say, oh, well, loads of people are looking at your ad, loads of people are engaging with it, they're clicking on it, etc. But what you've got to look at then is, okay, where are we sending them to? Where's the destination? So you piece it apart, because it's a whole hose, right? You've got to find the kink. What's the missing link that's just not making it work as a whole? You could have the best ads in the world, but if you're sending them to a destination that's like really confusing and it doesn't help them to get that ROI or reach the call to action, then you're just going to lose them on that front. So I would say if you're a month in, ask yourself the question: did you test enough? Are you like sure that you found this winning ad and you tried absolutely everything and gave it your best shot to test a load of different things, images, carousels, videos, etc., to find that? Okay, maybe you've got the winning ad. So yeah, you found the golden audience. You're a month in and you're not necessarily getting the results. So I would have a look at your campaign from a funnel view. So have a look at the click-through rate. Are the ads getting clicks in the first place? Are people getting interested in this stuff? Are they clicking on the ad? Is it gaining their attention? I use a kind of AIDA formula, right? Attention, interest, desire, action. The ad gets their attention and usually sparks an interest. They get to the landing page or the form or wherever they are. You then need to build a desire for them to want this product or service, and then you give them an action, which is call to action. So you tell me your ad's working, it's getting click-through rate, a good click-through rate. Now I want you to have a look at your landing page or the form that you're sending them to. Are you confusing them? Is there enough credibility building or trust building on this page that you're sending them to? Have you got testimonials? An example of the product or service being used, maybe a video introduction, reviews, key features and benefits of this product or service that you're offering. If your landing page is whack, if the form that you're sending to isn't great, then that could be why you're where you're dropping off. So I would just have a look at it from a funnel view, right? And just make sure that the expectations are managed, on the get-go. If you're trying to sell like a £3,000 product and you've only spent 400 in ad spend, then you're starting to worry about getting a return on investment. Sometimes you need to spend more. You could be spending, 2,500 to get a £3,000 product. I recently worked with a coach about 2 months ago, and their high ticket offer that we was advertising was 2,800, and we spent about, I think it was like 420 on ads, and he hadn't yet closed the package to high ticket offer. And I was like, man, you got to give me some room to breathe. Like we've got to pump a little more into this. It's a high ticket offer. They're going to be spending a lot of money. It's not something that you can make an impulsive decision on. So there's so many different variables, right? But really what it comes down to is, and why I'm deciding to really narrow down on this niche that I'm in, is finding a system that works, knowing that you've done your testing, finding the golden audience, and just look at the data. Is the ad getting clicks? Is it not? If it's not getting clicks, no one's showing interest, maybe you need to mix up the ad, test a few different images or videos. If it's getting the attention, and you're getting a drop off from the landing page, well, maybe it's something to do with your landing page. Split test landing pages. Send them to one that's shorter. Send them to one that's longer. Send them to one where there's more buttons, more call to actions. There's a ton of different things, and we could really speak about it for hours. But I would just always look at the campaign as a kind of from a bird's eye view. Don't just narrow down on the actual ad itself. You've got to look at everything.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm glad you mentioned big ticket items and stuff, because the way I look at any investment, whether this is ads, content, equipment, computers, whatever, right, is how many jobs or how many sales do I need to make from this thing, right? With a high ticket thing, if you're spending, let's say for example, your thing you're selling is $5,000, right? Let's just say for the sake of the conversation, it's $5,000, right? And you haven't spent $5,000 at least. If you spent less than $5,000 and you've made one sale, you've made money, right? No, you haven't made $5,000, but you've made maybe, let's say you made 500 quid, right? But then what happens when you get another one? Okay, you've suddenly made £5,500, right? Then if you get another one, you've suddenly made £10,500, right? So the thing is, if you invest first, so even if you lost money on the first one, for example, right? Let's say you spent $6,000 to get that one $5,000, okay? But then what happens when you get two? Okay, you've made $4,000, right? And then you get two more, $14,000, right? Etc. And you can scale it down and scale it up depending on the numbers you want to work with. I work with $5,000 because it makes the maths easy. But the point there is understanding: do you see hope, and is it going to work? Right, and trusting in the fact that it will. And this is, I think the main thing there is actually removing the concept of talking about an ad for a minute. In the same way in business, if you're in trouble in business and you haven't had sales and you haven't had this, and COVID's hit and etc., whatever it is, or we're in a recession, or it's if you're listening to this in a couple of years and we're in recession number 2 or 3 or whatever it may be, right? Or there's an issue in your business, ask yourself very simply: do you believe that you will be able to work your way out of this problem that you're in, right? Okay, you haven't made the money you need to make. Okay, it's up to you as a business owner to make that money. It's not going to fall in your lap. It's not just going to magically appear. No, you need to find, okay, well, something isn't working, and I'm glad that's why you mentioned it. Because for me, it's like one of those things where, okay, you find out what is working, you do more of that. You find out what isn't working, and you develop those till they work. Because it's not the concept of a bad idea doesn't exist. It's just sometimes an undeveloped idea. You need to develop it a bit more. You need to work on it a bit more, right? There's no such thing as a bad idea. You just need to work on it a bit more. It's the same with if you're a photographer or a videographer, right? You can start really bad. If you keep going for long enough, you'll get good enough to get paid whatever you want to get paid. If you want to get paid £1,500 a day, work very hard for a decade and you'll get paid £1,500 a day, right? There's videographers I know who get paid £1,500 a day, etc. Right? So it's not you're the only, and I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to wrap up soon. But the main point I want to make here is you're the only person standing between you and where you want to go, right? In business or in life or in if you want to if you're say for example you come out of lockdown, I don't like the way my fitness is, I don't know where my fitness level is. Okay, start running, get a personal trainer, go to the gym, go on a walk. Start building in those activities that are going to help you get to that place, right? Oh, I don't know how to do this. Okay, well, find a course, pay a mentor, talk to someone who is doing it. You want to know how to, I don't know how to create a media company. Okay, well, find someone who you like or whose content you like and who is running a media company and ask them, can you help me I understand how to create a media company. The majority of business owners are gonna be like, yes, absolutely, right?
Yeah, man. If you, we need to have another conversation about personal development and entrepreneurship. 100%. If you really want something, you'll just find a way to get it, right? When I started out in the freelancing space, I wanted to get experience around these branding agencies and see how they work with clients and their strategy and stuff, because I knew I wanted to have my own business one day. So what I did was, I emailed around, I called a few places. Oh no, we're too busy. Send your CV in the email. I knew that weren't going to get read. So what I actually used to do was go to these places physically in person, knock on the door and say, look, I want to work with you guys for just 2-3 hours, completely for free, show you what I can do. And that got my foot in the door with a lot of different places. And it's really like what Carl said, right? If you wanna do something, you will find a way. there's a thing called YouTube University and Google University, which literally has the answers to everything you want, know, and desire. You just got to put the time and the effort into finding out what it is that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, and I'm glad you said that. And there's obviously other methods and other things, but the thing is, like, we're in such a very fortunate position to live in the decade that we live in, and where we live in, because literally, if you want to learn, so if I want to learn like a different language tomorrow, I can open Google and I can start learning that language. Like, literally, the minute I finish this podcast, if I want to start learning Spanish, I could literally write into Google how to learn Spanish, press enter, and I would start to learn Spanish, right? That has never happened before.
Bro, it's insane.
Right?
Like it really grounds me and gives me this like huge sense of gratitude that I am in the position that I'm in, in a country full of opportunity, where I can pick up this device and I'm holding a phone in my hand right now and reach anyone I want in the world, within reason, and just make it happen. Like there's so much opportunity for us boys and girls these days that it's mind blowing. Take us back 20 years to where we are now. It's like the opportunity out there is just absolutely incredible, and it's endless.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think it's one of those things where it's not an age thing either. Like, the internet doesn't give a shit whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? If you still want to do something, it's never too late or never too early, right? Like, there's this misconception of, oh, I'm 40, I can't have my dream, whatever, blah 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 blah, right? And I don't want to go all Gary Vaynerchuk here, but the point that the point I'm making here is, it's not too late if you're willing to put in the work. Right? Is it harder when you're older? Yes, it is, right? Because you have more commitments, you have a family, blah, 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 blah. Yes, but it's still not impossible. It just becomes harder, right? There's a big difference there. And I think, and I think let's start to wrap up. But the thing I like to end off the podcast on is give you an opportunity to, throw in a topic specifically, or ask me a question specifically that you may have had throughout this podcast perhaps, or, has, piqued your interest specifically.
Okay. So how did you get started, man? Like, what was your beginning stages of entrepreneurship or running your own business?
There's a short answer and there's a long answer, as I'm sure every entrepreneur will tell you. From the way I think about it in hindsight, I've been an entrepreneur for as long as I can remember, right? From like school days, where you go to the shop, you spend an amount of money, you buy sweets, you flip them in school for 50%, double profit again, and then you do the same the next day and you make double again, so on, so on, so on, right? So there's that. Then there's paper rounds, jobs, so on, right? Like, for me, it's one of those things where I've always wanted to understand, how can I make money, right? How do I make this concept called money, right? In regards to like my production company now, I mean, like, for me, my background is game development, so that's what I studied to do, that's what I went to college for, etc. And I got to a point with that where I kind of got creatively stopped, right? I got to a point where I was like, okay, well, I've kind of achieved what I feel like I can achieve with this, right? So I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? And then around the same time, I got into photography. And then one thing led to another. I then became an event videographer quite quickly. Just reaching out to local events and taking action.
Yeah, that's it.
And one of the things I say is, you have to take action. You have to take action. I was talking to a client the other day, and I was like, you see these problems that you're having, right? These could be resolved by you having someone else who vets your calls, right? So. And I was like, oh, why don't you hire an assistant? Literally, 20 minutes after we had that conversation, he put up on Facebook, looking for an assistant, by the way. So I was like, okay, good. Action has been taken. Great. That means you're actually going to be one step closer to that result, right? That goal. And, so for me, I mean, like, my story, for those who, want to know, I've talked about it in many, many different videos, but just to finish off the rest of that story, as I went in and, I did event work, there was gaps, obviously, in the year where there wasn't much events going on. So I was like, okay, well, businesses probably would want some level of promotion at some point, right? One way or another. And then I built relationships with business owners, and then, then it grew into the more brand and business relationship aspects of what I do. And then one thing led to another, where that's when I ended up kind of, basically niching down into that, because I still enjoy events, but the thing was, it wasn't a month by month paycheck. There would be months where you make good money because of events were on, and then absolutely nothing for 4 months. And then good money again for like a month, and then no money, right? So it wasn't consistent. I couldn't scale it. I couldn't be like, right, if I do this, this, and this, I make this, right? And the thing is, for me, like a lot of people have said to me, oh, you work so much, this, this, and this. It's like, I'm a very competitive person, but also for me, I love what I do, number one, and the goal and the thing I achieve, right? It's not actually the money, right? Of course I have to have the money, but the thing I win in is being able to do every day what I want to do and be passionate about what I do. That's the goal. That's the thing you win, right? Like people say, do you get a holiday? Do you get this? You don't get days off? Blah blah blah. So I don't want one, right? I've worked so hard to get here. I'm now just trying to sustain this because this is what I would do in my holiday, right? And this is what some people don't understand is I would do this in my holiday. This is what I would do if I was having to have a real job.
Yeah, they
right?
They say you've found what you want to do if you're happy to do it without getting paid for it. Like, and it's not to say that you have to love what you do, because that's not true. There's many elements of my business that I don't necessarily enjoy, but it's the kind of overall aspect that, I'm in control of my future, and what I put in is what I get back. So that's and I'm happy to. It's not that I'm passionate about ads, right? I'm just passionate about growth, like growing as a person, helping people to grow themselves as a person or their businesses. That's really what I'm kind of passionate about. But yeah, man, it's been a great conversation, man. Pleasure to have me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, it's it's a pleasure to have you on. And for those people who would be interested in potentially talking to you about ads, seeing some of your content, etc., 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 where specifically can people, where's the best place to reach out if they want to have a chat, or they want to see some of your content?
Yeah, man. So they can reach me on Instagram. Instagram handles env_mehme, which is spelled MEHMET. I don't know if you can plant it on screen or anything.
Yeah, I will link it in the
yeah. Just link my Facebook, I guess, Instagram. You can head over to my website, but yeah, mainly really active on socials, specifically kind of Instagram. So that's the best place to reach me.
Fab. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's job
Thank you
done.
very much, dude.
Thanks so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me once again, and I hope you did enjoy that episode and that little interview, and I hope you took that golden nugget, or those golden nuggets from it, pun intended, and I hope you're good, hope you're well, hope you're having a good day, and and took some value from this podcast, and it was really, really good to kind of understand a little bit more about the ad process. I mean, of course, I knew to a certain level, but it's always good to educate yourself, and that's part of why I like to do the podcast still, and why we're still doing the podcast moving forward as well, because it allows me to talk about what I do, but also talk about what other social media people do and other business owners do, and showcase them and showcase what they do, and also hopefully get some value out there into the world. So if you did enjoy this video or this podcast, then make sure to leave this video with a like, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. And if you're new to the channel and would like to not miss the next episode of the podcast that I upload weekly, then make sure to be subscribed to the channel, and I'll see you very, very soon.